everyone, and welcome. It is wonderful to see so many of you here, practitioners, policymakers, educators, researchers, and advocates, all in one room, all for the same reason. Because we believe this conversation matters. Women constitute half of the world's population, but their labor force participation leaves much to be desired. The gender gap in labor force participation has remained constant over the past 3 decades. Women still earn less, own less, and have a far less say in financial decisions at home and at work. They carry a disproportionate share of unpaid care, and they work in places and commute in cities that were not designed with them in mind. And in far too many places, education has not translated into employment. We think we know the reasons, but how often have we asked the women themselves? To do this exactly, I will now invite Anuradha Das Mathur, founder, Vedica For Women, and the founder and dean of the Vedica Scholars Program, to set the context for our day and discuss the study. Anuradha Das Mathur.
Thanks, Vidisha. Before I get into the talk, I really do have to say a very big thank you to Dr. Rashmi Singh for setting the tone for what we call this new world order, because you would know that audiences like this really worry when we invite either a senior person from government or a person from politics till the last minute. We are hoping that they will show up. And I have such a unique situation on our hands that instead of calling and saying, I will not be able to come, the office asked whether we could do this just a little bit early. So I'm so grateful that at this time when we are sitting and contemplating a new way to be, I think people such as yourself are already setting the tone. So thank you. On behalf of Vedica For Women and our partners, FICCI, YFLO Delhi and Nikore Associates, it is truly my privilege to welcome all of you to unpack this Delhi's women and work puzzle. The response to this discussion from participants and speakers alike tells us that this is a theme whose time has arrived, if not super overdue. We are especially excited because I think reports like these should not lie around in dusty corridors. They should be the basis of opening up dialogue, connect with women's real lived experiences, and move us towards action and change in the world beyond this room. I think today offers us a beginning. For those of you who may not know us, Vedica's mission has always been to become the go-to institution for everything to do with women and work. We began our journey with the Vedica Scholars Program. It is 10 years now. We have more than 800 alums in the world. But this was dedicated to individual change, readying young women to thrive in the workplace. With 10 years of experience behind us, we have realized that just working with young women is not enough, because they have employers to deal with, they have homes to deal with, they have society to deal with, they have institutions to deal with, and of course they have policies and systems that shape the world they operate in. And therefore, with the learnings of 10 years, we feel very ready to expand our work to organizational and systemic change. We want to shape not only women's journeys, but also the workplace, systems, and the ideas that build them. And that's really what Vedica For Women is about. And that's why, like Vidisha said, today's conversation matters so much. And we need to do this together, collectively. I'm delighted to see many faces in the room, everyone in their own way working towards more women in the workplace, making the world more equal, and I feel very, very excited and encouraged and positive about what lies ahead. Just as an example, we live in a country with over 4,700 colleges and universities dedicated to women's education. And there is no platform that brings them together to talk about what is the future of women's education, what can we do together, is there a difference we can make, what is our role in society. And again, I'm delighted that what we started out as an idea literally 2 months ago. We sent out letters inviting principals of Delhi's colleges, and I can see several of them in the room today, to get started with what a collective voice and representation can do for change. And I think one of the areas to think about is that if there are these many women's institutions focused on education, a lot of the education has been about empowering women, making them financially independent. Clearly, women in the workplace is a very different story from women in higher education. And even as we recognize the need for this change and equality, there is murmurs, almost like an anti-wave, that is building in the world against diversity, against inclusion, and the fact that there is too much going on about women and too much focus on women and girls. And that's why it's very important for us to remind ourselves that while we are moving ahead, the work is very far from over. That progress for women has never been guaranteed. If we take our eye off the ball, we can slip back very, very quickly. And so we have to keep at it collectively every day. Just some very quick examples. Switzerland, amongst the highest per capita GDP countries in the world. The last woman in Switzerland got the right to vote in 1991. Till 1991, it wasn't a right for women of Switzerland to vote. Ivy League colleges. Most Ivy League colleges admitted women 200, 250, 300 years after they were established. Most Ivy League colleges admitted women in the mid-60s and the 70s when they were set up in the 17 and 1800s. In England, women needed their husbands to access even a mortgage till not so long ago. And even as I speak here today, only 0.5% of recorded history is about women in the world. History, movies like Hidden Figures, they remind us that while women have always done fantastic work, neither systems, nor society, nor organizations, nor families recognize it in the manner that it should. But change is not going to come from either women or systems alone. If we want equality, we have to inspire women to want differently, to think differently, and to act differently about their future. And that shift won't happen in isolation. So families, institutions, markets, governments have to recognize that aspiration and then enable it. Coming to the report for today's discussion, we are really delighted that we were able to collaborate with Vicky, YFLO, and Nikore to bridge the data gap. Because without credible, context-rich evidence to inform policy, we aren't going to make very much progress. So we have to inform policy, organizational practices, and curriculum if we have to make this shift. But this study is not just about data. It's about the lived reality that women live every day, which is behind the numbers. It's about identifying what must shift in mindsets to start with, in institutions, and in opportunity structures that finally enable them. This study was designed to look across all 11 districts of Delhi. It's drawn on the voices of more than 3,000 women between the ages of 18 and 60. We've done focus group discussions, so the data and the insights that have come out are actually very rich and will allow us to move beyond assumptions to evidence and then have policy informing. Why we chose Delhi? Because Delhi represents a striking contradiction. Women in Delhi are amongst the most educated, but amongst the least employed. And this is just so counterintuitive, especially, ma'am, given that the government has spent so much money over the years to educate women thinking that will empower and give them agency. But at a time when women-led development in India is having a moment, the real question is, what does this mean for the everyday woman? Does it expand her choices? And is it going to make sustained work possible? My hope today is that everyone leaves this room with one feeling, that the work towards equality has begun, but it is very far from finished. And that if we are serious about women-led development, then we have to move from celebrating exceptional women to creating the conditions in which the vast majority of women can participate, contribute, and lead. And therefore, it is my privilege that Dr. Rashmi Singh, Secretary Women and Child Development in the Government of Delhi, whose work sits at the intersection of policy, care, gender and public systems, is here with us today. I don't think we could have a more fitting voice. And I was speaking to her in the run-up to this event saying, it is high time that we move from looking at women as a part of the problem and starting to look at them as a part of the solution. So with that, I would love to invite Dr. Rashmi Singh to deliver the opening keynote.
So first of all, I must compliment the organizers, Vedica For Women and FICCI, YFLO and Nikore Associates, for bringing together a galaxy of people from different walks of life, especially the academia, I think whom we often miss out in the discourses, even within the government, when we are talking about, making of schemes, programs, policies, and the kind of research and evidence-based, data, which comes from, lot of, I think, analysis of look and tools are often not utilized, when we look at the pragmatic solutions through the schemes and programs of the government. And today, we are standing here talking on an issue which, of course, the whole nation is seized of. Why? Because when we talk about Viksit Bharat, when we talk about the speed and the scale at which we need development to take place, we know that it is imperative that we make women's work count in terms of not just identifying the bottlenecks, not just identifying the challenges, but in making sure that all of us become part of the solution. And that's why discourse like these and the research which has been undertaken by Vedica For Women holds a special significance. And that too in a place like Delhi, which actually represents a mini India. Even when you look at the data in terms of the states that are represented amongst the students who come here, the education sector, we find that there's representation across various states. And similarly, when it comes to habitat, not just the students, the habitat, you'll find that you'll have various states represented here. And you also have huge challenge of rural-urban migration or seasonal migration. So in Delhi, when we look about, the whole mapping, the whole canvas, I think we have to be very mindful about, looking at the complexity involved, and also be mindful about the fact that we do not miss out, on the full canvas. And I have not had the benefit of actually reading the report, but I do hope that there would be insights which will actually bring us
into closer reality with the challenges which happen in metropolitan cities like Delhi. And I'm also happy about the fact that today when we are talking about this discourse of women's work count and looking at ways in which we are trying to address this huge challenge, brought out, say, in the report of finding that so many educated women not really going to work, vis-a-vis the fact that today we all know that the opportunities are there, umpteen in numbers, taking us from the time that our discourse was looking at women welfare, to women's empowerment, to women's development, and now to women-led development. So in terms of mapping the opportunities which are there for bringing about women-led development, we have to be very mindful again about the canvas of opportunities throughout the length and breadth, including Delhi. So the shift in terms of women being seen only as beneficiaries to now partners in development is more real for all of us to see today, than ever before. And also, I was happy to see that Vedica has actually talked about, women's productive capacity, the asset, the positive, contribution of women, which is there, and yet probably the challenge being that it's not getting either fully counted or not being fully tapped. Why I say that both dimensions are important is because when we look at, how much of women's work has been counted, we do feel that there can be two kind of scenarios. One is where the work is not actually monetized, women into care economy, and yet there are countries which have made women's work count, even though it was not monetized, by bringing about, many of you would be aware, like in Scandinavian countries, you have like a satellite economy and, so that problem is of course there, that you have not monetized, but even in terms of work which has been monetized, yet quite often we find that in many of the sectors, we have not been able to capture that. The informal sector, the unorganized sector. So we have not been able to actually capture their contribution in the economy. As far as the role in the government is concerned, we have been very mindful that we need to look at the whole ecosystem. When I say the ecosystem, it is not just looking at creating more of production capacity, improving the value chain, but also the ecosystem around in terms of women's mobility, having safe places where they can stay. You would have heard about programs like Working Women Hostel. You would have heard about programs like having creches for women. Like in Delhi recently, we opened 502 creches for women, for working women, or even for those women who were not going out, yet they were doing home-based work. So many of the home-based work which otherwise doesn't count, but women actually came to these creches to say that, well, we are not coming out, yet we need to put our child there because our value in terms of what we can produce at home will improve if there is a care work happening elsewhere for our children. Urban mobility, again, a huge, huge thing. Then, places where facilities of public toilets lacking, again a huge thing. That government in terms of mapping the ecosystem has been mindful about creating these spaces, where women feel safe enough to be moving out. And safety and security, again a huge issue. And there are, of course, it's a huge challenge even today, despite the fact that we have tried to, bring in the topmost attention, at least in terms of realizing the significance of this public safety and security in impacting women's work. Legislation, like you would have heard about prevention of sexual harassment of women at workplace, the POSH Act. Now again, it's something which is meant to have a better enabling mechanisms put in place to, give women that feeling of safety. And I know that even today, we are struggling to ensure that the acts are truly implemented in letter and spirit. Even today, we are struggling to have the ICCs, the Internal Complaints Committee mechanism, or the Local Complaints Committee mechanism, be fully in charge of, what they are actually supposed to do. But all this is a huge step forward, I think, from the times where we were actually not being able to map the canvas involved. Now the question is, when I look at the study which you have come up with, it's actually very surprising that when you say 1 out of 5, educated women not being able to work, actually troubling also that, So what could be the reason? What explains this gap from education to empowerment? I mean, is it because of some social norms still? Is it because of the gap between the demand and the supply that you are not actually being able to find work in the area in which you want work, whereas there are areas which are looking for people, but they are not finding the right fit. So I think more nuanced, understanding of these will help us better in the days to come. Is it because our workplaces are still not providing that kind of flexible working arrangement? So is it, because women want to have a better choice in terms of making a better women work-life balance? Be in terms of their physical mobility or, the way the social norms today are still being cast, the gender roles are still being cast, of women still being challenged with, this huge multiple roles which they are, battling with. So what are these barriers? Is it only the mindset issue? Is it the individual choice? Or is it, because you don't have a choice? Is it that the care responsibilities which government public provisioning, to the extent at which it is wanted, it's still not being able to respond to that extent? So there are these various questions which come to us, and I'm sure that what also researchers, especially over here, would like to find out is, looking at choices varying between the age groups, the various socio-economic strata of society, because there are various kinds of factors which are at play, at the different strata. And we also need to map at looking at the good practices in terms of what intervention are actually helping. And again, I find that lots and lots of opportunities in looking at certain interventions across the public sector, private sector, business, CSR models, not just in Delhi, but across different parts of the country. So does that enable us an opportunity to leverage better by looking at these practices and scaling it up? When I say scaling it up, it again, I think, reminds us that we need to have some targets. So when I was speaking, to Anuradha here in terms of, what are these challenges? And whereas data is one, definitely, but also in terms of like knowing the target which makes us more accountable together as collective partners, be it FICCI organizations like YFLO, be it other, business partners, looking at how many women they are employing. I was a part of PhD Chamber of Commerce, this starting of an award program where every year you might have heard about Astitwa Award, Astitwa Samman. And how we factored that was that let's look at how the businesses are promoting women workforce participation. So year after year, creating these benchmarks which enable you to see how much you've been able to do in private sector. But at the same time, it is definitely going to be a very, very, collective effort which is needed, looking at the huge numbers. When we talk about targets, we are looking at huge numbers. When we look at the data in terms of the women workforce participation, and if we are planning to take it from, like, say, in Delhi, to 50%, what do we require to do? At what speed we require that to do? Does it need a task force of experts, from various sectors to be, doing this concurrent monitoring and evaluation, and a data which actually doesn't wait for like a decadal census, a data which is more decentralized, a data which is more dynamic, which is more real time, so that it's, the action, the concurrent action is something which is informed by data and vice versa. That, so the need for dynamic data is again something which is very important. In my practical experience, I would like to share with you that through the Department of Women and Child Development, which is conventionally, it was supposed to be looking at only, say, social protection, social welfare aspect, and there we changed the narrative to say that no, we are actually looking for, engaging with women as partners in development. How? Because, just tapping the entrepreneurial spirit which is there. And that spirit which is there at the community level. So we don't even have to go, to the polytechnics or the, institutes of excellence, because there are women who may have even non-formal education and yet they have the entrepreneurial spirit. So we developed a program called the Women's Work Program. And the Women's Work Program, we partnered with a university called the Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University, and started tapping these women's groups, and nurturing their, business instinct, business ideas, and mentoring them. And, whether through self-help group or through individual businesses. So both. And I tell you that we could have like such amazing networks created at the community level of looking at, different kinds of startups, like starting canteens, starting food kitchens. And of course, it's a work in progress again, where I think people like you, we would really appreciate that we have more forces who join in, because when I talk about the numbers, it's actually looking at numbers of people who are being influenced, not just those who are directly joining the program, but others who are a part of the ecosystem, because they also get encouraged that they are a part of that entrepreneurial climate in which they can see certain role models, and have that hope and confidence. And so the big question where we, keep challenging ourselves is that how do we tap the synergy, the potential synergy between these various actors who are there, even within the government, within the departments. I tell you, we have like skill and entrepreneurship as a department working, women and child development as a department, science and technology, or environment, which is trying to promote various ways in which you can create opportunities. I'll give you an example. I got a call from NCD Horticulture Department saying that, ma'am, you are like working with women's groups. Is it possible for these groups to be looking after our gardens, our horticulture parks, which today we are not able to maintain? My answer was that yes, they certainly can, but what is the incentive which you have designed for them? Because that's another thing which we need to be mindful about. That, today when we talk about creating these business, understanding and business ideas, it's not just creating financial literacy, digital literacy, opening of a bank account alone. It has to be more than that. It has to be like, actually looking at, the whole value proposition which is meant for them. And there I think women were earlier supposed to be. It was assumed that they take a back seat. नहीं वो तो सब कुछ फ्री में कर देती है ना, ऐसी बात थी कि नहीं वो तो मुफ्त. तो मतलब महिलाओं को एज इफ जो है अगर बिजनेस आइडिया है उसका, ठीक है, इफ दे टॉक अबाउट व्हाट इज देयर इन इट फॉर मी, probably they'll be cast with certain values which are not traditionally supposed to go with their gender role. So today we are battling with this huge challenge also of, changing the mindset of women themselves, girls themselves, to talk, in terms of the value which they create or co-create in the society to be valued in monetary terms also. Non-monetary, of course, किसको आदर नहीं चाहिए, किसको सम्मान नहीं चाहिए, हम सबको चाहिए, लेकिन उस आदर और सम्मान के साथ और भी तो चाहिए. तो ये बातें जो है, तो ये डिस्कोर्स में मुझे लगता है कि बहुत ये समय संदर्भिक ये आपका इस तरह का जो आप कॉन्फ्रेंस कर रहे हैं, समय की मांग है, टाइमलीनेस है कि हम ज़्यादा इस पर बात करें, हम इस पर विचार करें, हम इस पर कार्य करें और हम सामूहिक रूप में मिल करके कार्य करें. तो ये चुनौती में आप सब बहुत बहुत खरे उठोगे, ये मेरा विश्वास है. बहुत बहुत शुभकामना.
Thank you, Dr. Singh, for giving us a lay of the land and also filling it up with so much pragmatism, but optimism as well. Please accept this token of appreciation on our behalf. We will now begin with our panel discussions. Our first panel is on Delhi's women and their relationship with work, reading between the lines. It goes deep into what the study actually found on many barriers: financial agency, care, family, support, and mobility. The data challenge much of what we thought we knew. Our panelists for today are Mitali Nikore, founder Nikore Associates and lead author of this study. Mitali. Urvashi Butalia, founder Zuban Books. Urvashi is also a very popular teacher at Vedica. Mandakini Kaul, South Asia Regional Coordinator, World Bank Group. Sindhuja Penumarty, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. The panel will be moderated by Anuradha Das Mathur.
Right. Thank you all for being here. And the first panel and all of you for all getting all the hoots from the audience. So I didn't get any. I'm very upset. I was joking, guys. Okay, so this panel, and as you heard us talk in the beginning, and then Dr. Singh mentioned a few things, and I think her talk has set the tone partly for exactly what this room is about, because there are so many assumptions we make about women and work. she talked about creches, and you will hear what this report says about creches and how women feel about that. But the whole idea of this panel is that there is a certain relationship that women have with work in Delhi, super educated and very, very underemployed. What can we read between the lines to figure out why all the work that has been done over these years to get women into education and get them to, finish school, get past college, get past higher education, with the intention that they will be empowered, that they will have agency, but that's not quite where education has led us. The way we'll run this panel is, I'm going to walk you through 5 of our key findings, and I really want all of you from your areas of expertise to react by saying, listen, are you at all surprised by this finding, or are you surprised by some nuance, and what in your view explains that finding? And Mitali has conducted a lot of the research. She's really sort of the data and research architect of what we've done. So I want to, request you to add the nuances and the inputs wherever required. So the first finding of our study is that it's actually entry into the workforce and not re-entry into the workforce that is actually the problem. And if all of us in this room who are familiar with what organizations talk about, all the people who are sitting with oodles of money in organizations, the HR heads, they are all talking about returnship programs, getting back to work. But if 75% of Delhi's educated women have never gone to work, then clearly we are battling with an entry problem and not a re-entry problem. So I'm going to start with you, Mitali. Talk to us about whether you were surprised when you found this and what do you think explains.
So thanks a lot. First of all, I want to just begin by thanking Aaradhana and YFLO Delhi for actually bringing us onto this into this group, and of course Anuradha, because very honestly for us at Nikore Associates, we've been working on women's workforce participation at a macro level for a very long time. But we had also not had the opportunity to zoom in on Delhi. And this is our home. And at the end of the day, this is where we think, okay, यहाँ पे तो problem solve हो गया होगा. यहाँ पे तो actually you have so many opportunities, so many industries as well, not only services. So I think, I really credit both of you for being the brains behind this concept, and we are very, very glad to have supported you in the execution and implementation of the survey. I think when we looked at some of the findings, some things were really surprising to us. I think the one thing that really stood out, and of course this point which you mentioned, but another finding which is related to this, what are the archetypes of women who are actually working that came out in our study? So the archetype of a woman who's most likely to be employed is somebody who has done a professional degree. Like if they've done an MBA, they're in law or engineering. But it's somebody who's a professionally qualified postgraduate and is belonging to 2 types of income groups. Either, of course, the postgraduates are more likely to be found in the higher income groups. And then there's a second archetype of women who are very likely to be at work, which is the ones who don't have much education and are belonging to the low income communities. So you're literally seeing a missing middle, where there are women who have, who are in a middle income household, say between 50,000 to 2 lakhs household income. They don't have a postgraduate degree, they just have a graduation degree, or they just have schooling, they've completed schooling. And they are actually the least likely to be in the labor force. And this actually is something that I was, of course, surprised by, but then we cross-referenced it with the macro data. And it pans out, even at a national level in the urban database in the periodic labor force participation survey. It's very clear that this missing middle is being replicated across urban India, because we are starting to see that there are certain families for whom it doesn't make sense until the woman is earning enough for her to be in the workforce. So once you're a postgraduate, you're going for a corporate sector job or a highly paying job, you're progressing in your career. But if you're not a postgraduate, then you're not able to access those new type of corporate jobs at all. And therefore, there is a cost to your leaving the home. So I think this finding on entry and not re-entry completely syncs with this missing middle problem, which is that you see that at the start itself, if you haven't had the chance to complete your education, as they say, getting your master's degree or a professional degree, then you're in that situation where you don't know whether you can actually have a full-fledged career. And that's why we were initially surprised, and then we cross-referenced it with the macro data and we said, okay, it explains it.
Urvashi?
Anuradha, you want us to respond just to the first question you're asking?
I'll come to all the others,
So then I don't have to say everything I want to say.
Those you can, and we'll find more for you to say in the next round.
No, okay. So first of all, let me congratulate you all of you for this report, because it's really quite interesting to see, and it's a first time thing. I'm not an economist or somebody who is specialized in labor or anything like that, so I will not be speaking from that perspective. I'm talking more from my involvement as a feminist who's been concerned about the same issue and who's been involved in women's activism forever, gone grey doing it. So, I mean, the report has really interesting findings, but one of the things that I was concerned about, I think that it is a mistake, and correct me if I'm wrong, to link education and work in such a clear way. That the fact that women are more educated or are enrolling more, completing more, does not necessarily mean that they will step into the workforce more. We don't raise that question about men, but we raise it about women because we think that education is the pathway to jobs or work. But as you yourself pointed out, that I think those women of a particular class who go in for professional courses know beforehand that they want to work. But those women who are simply doing education because it's a good thing, and it's what they want to do to get out of the house, may also look on other options, may look at marriage and so on and so forth as possibilities to escape the stranglehold of the home if they experience it like that. I think the way that I would look at it is, if we had a situation in which there were huge numbers of opportunities for women to enter the workforce and women were not taking advantage of that. But right now the opportunities are few, the educated cohort is huge, they don't know whether they want to work, but they know they want education. I think those two things we should try to think of separately. A question was put to all of us in the mail that you sent. Were we surprised at the findings of this report? Not really, but disappointed. Disappointed not because the report is bad, the report's great, but no, but I know. It's disappointed that in this city, which should see something different, because of so many things that have happened to give women access, we are still not seeing it. And it may be interesting to compare it with other places. Let's look at Tamil Nadu, where women are coming out in twice the numbers. So maybe that kind of comparison. And finally, I mean, this is everything I wanted to say, but I'll expand on it if you want me to later. I think another thing that is an unspoken element in this analysis which needs to come in, and I'm saying this based on the kind of research that we have done in Zuban on women and labor force participation. The unspoken element is violence. Yeah. You know, what role does the presence of violence in the workplace in multiple forms, and you've talked about POSH, but I'm not talking only about POSH. I'm talking about the things that can't be identified easily, but are so debilitating, so diminishing, that they are actually a kind of mental, psychological violence. You know, a teacher saying to you, haan, ladkiyan to aise hi karti hain, etc., that kind of thing. That is what keeps women out of the workforce also. So I think we need to also look at that element.
Yeah, no, thank you. I just want to, I'll place the question and then you can come back to it later, Urvashi, because I think the fact that it doesn't link is evident, right? That education and employment is not. And so can we peel that a little bit more to say, what is it? Is it our upbringing where girls are just not brought up to believe that they need to work? And I'm going to park that and we'll come back to that. But also from what you're saying, you know, there was a McKinsey study done, I think 7, 8, no, not that one, not the GDP one. There was a study done 5 or 6 years ago, which was a regional study. I mean, it was a global study with a focus in South Asia, Southeast Asia, where they asked women that if there is one job, who should get it? I mean, they asked everyone. And women felt the men should take it. The men should take it. Like, if there is only... Why does that surprise you? It surprises me because I just feel like we are, I mean, at least urban educated women, I would expect would be a little bit past that. And I do, you know, I've done polls with our girls, Urvashi, over the years, and they said that, you know, they would be okay to be the primary earning member in their homes. They also said that their parents would not approve of being with a guy who was not the primary earning member. So it's a nuanced response, but I do think it's changing. Also because demography, you're not moving from your father to your husband anymore. I mean, that data is so blunt that you're marrying late or not marrying. So this 8 or 10 year gap between leaving your parents' home and then getting married, like what are you going to do? Who's going to support you? So I think that question haunts me, and you know, we'll come back to you for that. Mandakini?
And thanks very much, Anuradha, and really an eminent panel, and great to see the audience. I really have a lot to say about this, so I'm going to try and maybe be a little more strategic in the way I begin my remarks, and also I am an economist, so perhaps there is some data I can share. But I think one of the things to remember is that female labor force participation across the globe has always been 50% less than men. And in India, we've seen this trend of very low, declining female labor force participation, especially in urban areas. But one of the things, and I really congratulate you on doing this study, is that there is also a huge effort to say why it is important. So it's not a nice to have or a good to have. And in fact, we have a lot of data that now quantifies that if men and women worked equally, what benefit it would be to the GDP of an economy, right? So it's not we're just doing it because we just think we like women to also work, but that, and I'm sorry, I'm now at that stage in life where everything is a brain fog, so I have to read out some of the data from, but really, no, but you know, so we do say that, that if you could close this gender gap, GDPs of most countries would improve by at least 20%. So it's an economic gain. We'll all be better off. So I think that's an important thing to remember, which is why studies like this are important, because as your secretary today said, that, you know, for Vikasit Bharat, for India to succeed. So I think that's important to remember, that data, studies, quantification helps us make this into a very concrete economic reality, that men and women need to participate equally, and therefore, why don't they? The second thing is that there is already a lot of research out there. India particularly has been a conundrum that we have not been able to solve, that why are urban women not participating as much in the workforce as men are. I grew up in Delhi, I went to school here, I went to university, then I went out. I'm probably a minority in my cohort from university who's working. I have a 14-year-old son. I am one of the few mothers in school who's working. And so indeed, this is the issue now. Is it that I studied more than them? I don't think so. Actually, a lot of them have worked. So we can unpack this a little bit. But what I would also like to do is to invite you to look at, the World Bank does this very interesting report. So we do a lot of reports, some of which, as you said, end up being dusty, cornered reports. But there is a very nice one called Women, Law and Business. And the latest edition has just come out. 190 countries are evaluated, And there are some startling findings, and then I will very quickly get into the entry as well. But just to say that only 4% of women live in economies with nearly full legal rights. So there is no country in the world that is actually granting equal rights to men and women. I think that's a very important point to remember. Globally, worldwide, women actually only hold 2/3 of the legal rights granted to them. So you were talking about Sweden, but even now, actually, it's 2/3 of legal rights that are given to men are given to women, and implementation, of course, is something we cannot even get into. And then they say that even where there are equal rights, it's only 47% that's implemented. So let's just start by saying the playing field is not level, and entry or exit, none of that is level at all. Now this report then looks at, and every year it comes out with very interesting findings, and this is, I shouldn't be admitting it, but this is a closer, this is one of the few reports that I also read. I don't read every report that comes out, but it highlights 3 areas that are particularly critical for women in the labor force. And the first that comes out every year is security. So, violence, security, that's the most important. The second, childcare. And, as I said, I have a 14-year-old son. I can tell you a whole lot about childcare. You have, I think, you have other questions around that, but childcare. And then the third is the whole access to finance, entrepreneurship, the business environment. I think those are 3 very important areas that we could unpack. And finally, I think when we talk about entry and education, I don't know how many of you are aware of something called the leaky pipeline. I don't know how many of you have heard of it, right? And I, like I said, I have a 14-year-old, and I see this at the moment, where he's now gone into a grade where there's going to be subject choices, and physics and maths have suddenly become the boys' subjects, and the girls say we will do biology and psychology. And I'm like, why? And so I think it's not just what you study, but it's also how you are educated and where it takes you. So indeed, this does not come as a surprise to me. I don't think we have the answers yet. I don't think it's a simple solution, but I would say security, childcare, access to finance, and just this whole idea of entrepreneurship are very important. So I think I've left a few more questions.
Yeah, we'll come back to those. Yeah. Sindhuja.
So thank you so much for having me on this panel. And I think what did surprise me was not this, and I'll come to that later, but it's when we look at even the research that we've done at the EAC, if we look by age, at which age women's labor force participation is peaking and at which age they're dropping off, 20 to 30 is the age group when women are really entering the labor force. Then in the 30 to 40 period is when it peaks, and after 40 it drops, and that also links very closely to the care responsibilities of women. Now, when we talk about entry, it really matters whether women, at what age women are entering, and that's something I think the next study that we do probably needs to look at, is at what age are women really entering the first time, and is it that, and I don't have an answer to this, and is it that if they miss the 20 to 30 bus, then there's no way they can, catch up to it later. So I think that's what comes to mind when we see that there's entry and not the re-entry that's the bigger problem.
Yeah, I think the assumption, or very often that is what was assumed, that out of college you will get a job and then you will drop off. So I think what is surprising here is that very large numbers of women, young women, are finishing college and not even taking that first job before dropping out. So I think, if you have any thought on what is it that is it that women are not, at least, we started Vedica on that basis. The leaky pipeline that you talked about is really what we started with, that like you, I went to college here, and the brightest women going to college, come 30, they were all dropping out of the workforce. And I come from a home, my mother's an IS officer. I have not grown up with the notion of women having to make choices. So it struck me, and then, you keep getting into it and realize that while we don't know the answers, at least the picture is stuck, right? That urban educated women are not in the workforce. So whatever those reasons be, but Urvashi, would you like to hazard a guess? What is your view on just the mindset that girls are brought up, not just in India, but globally with the belief that for them it's a choice. And when you say you don't ask men the questions, because men don't have the choice. They have to work. They are not given the choice to not work, whereas women are given the choice. Or sometimes they are not given the choice to. Yeah. What I'm saying is that the progressive home will say, "Kaam karna hai to aap kar sakte ho." Otherwise, the assumption is that you don't need to work. So yeah. So I don't know. I mean, is it really going back in time?
To say to somebody, "Kaam karna hai to aap kar sakte ho," is not really a choice. No. It's a compromise or it's a solution to that. अच्छा वो करना चाहती है तो उसको करने दो. It's like we'll allow you to work. You know, that kind of thing. I think, Anuradha, the reason why I said, why are you surprised at that? Let me give you an example which I give to my class all the time. They'll be familiar with it. So in the census, the question that often used to be asked about work was always put to men. क्या करते हो? And the man would say, मैं ये करता हूँ, वो करता हूँ. फिर उससे पूछा जाता था, आपकी बीवी क्या करती है? And he'd say, कुछ नहीं करती. Okay. So then it was feminists lobbied and lobbied and lobbied with the government to change that. But what they said to the states was, do not ask the same question of the woman. You know, train your enumerators, ask them to go in at a time when you meet the woman, etc. But do not ask the same question because she will also say, मैं कुछ नहीं करती. But instead you ask her कि सुबह से रात तक आपका दिन जो है उसको describe करो. फिर वो सुबह 4 बजे से शुरू करके रात के 10 बजे के आपको पूरा टाइम टेबल दे देगी. हर आधे घंटे वो कुछ ना कुछ कर रही है. So I think it's just that question that we have to ask the right questions. And if you're asked in a household that if there was one job, would you want it or would the man? Who do you think? She will of course say the man. She knows कि आदमी की नौकरी पक्की है. She knows कि बच्चा आदमी के पेट में नहीं बैठता है. If she has a child, she will have to take off. She knows कि घर का काम उसको करना पड़ेगा. Why should she choose a double burden? What is the work giving her? Okay, it's giving her income, it's giving her some freedom, yes, but she's making an intelligent choice and thinking, okay, I'm not going to get those to the extent I want. Let me just stay here, a place I know. It's not the best thing, but I think that could be an answer. And finally, I know because I'm not from the disciplines like all of you are, I think in a slightly different way where I think oranges and apples can be compared, you know. In disciplinary things they can't. But so to me it's very interesting to put the same question you're putting about women and workforce participation to women in the unorganized sector. When you look at Delhi and women in the unorganized sector, you never see a woman who is not working. Every hour of the day, and she's going, wo roti paka rahi hai, then she's going to do jhadu pocha, then she's doing something else. She's doing 10 jobs in the day. So if we want evidence of women's desire to work, and they need to work, there it is. So the question maybe we should ask in terms of why is it that middle class women
No, I think that
choices.
is the. Okay, we're going to move on to the second finding of the study, which is that women's control over money remains low, even within the home. So if the woman is the person running the kitchen, running the house, less than 10% of those women have any say on how they spend money. Even among women who are earning, less than 50% actually have agency over them. So, would you like to go first?
Sure. So this is actually a finding that again, I mean, when you look at urban areas, when you look at Delhi, this doesn't come as a surprise, because again, all of the work that we've done confirms this, and I can give you a lot of data and evidence around this. So there are 3 parts to it. One is that women now are actually opening more bank accounts. Women do have more, at least it's across the world. But we also know they are not operating those accounts. So we also know that while there is an account in their name, they are not operating it. And again, this is not just true of India or South Asia, but across the world. And I don't want to bombard you with numbers, but there are lots of numbers. What we also know is that this is changing a little bit with digitization. So the fact that you now have a mobile phone, and you could potentially have an app on that phone so that you don't have to go to the bank, so that you don't physically have to get out of the house. That's changing. So, there is, I think this is an area where slowly change is occurring. So the first step was to make sure that, these bank accounts are opened, and not just India. Second was they were operated by the brother, the father, the husband, but with the digital world opening up, and we also know that for educated women, digital world is allowing them to do a lot of other work. I mean, there are two ways of looking at it, because there's also an interesting study that says that you lock the woman in, right? You just say, okay, do whatever you want online and don't step out. So it works both ways. But I think the access, the control over money, or the access to finance, or the using of it is not a surprise. And again, this is confirmed world over. But I think this is an area where having a banking app on your phone is making a difference and is changing.
Mitali, what about
Yeah, actually, I want to react to both of these things, that Urvashi and Mandakini were saying. See, when we were doing the study, we also had actually a lot of these thoughts, and Mandakini, of course, we worked on this, so I had these thoughts. When we spoke to the women, see, they don't think of, and because I think we are an Asian society, we're not an individualistic society, right? So we don't think of our earnings as our earnings.
Yeah.
So when on this finding particularly, a lot of women told us we are earning for our family. So, my husband is the primary income earner. He's bringing in the lion's share of the money of the household income. My role is to contribute to this pot, and I want to spend a lot of the money that I earn not on myself. I have absolutely no aspiration for that. I want to spend it on my children. I want to spend it on my family members. Or my mother is unwell. She asked me for this one sari. I want to buy this sari for her, and I want to get it for her, and I don't want to ask someone else for that money. So very honestly, I think the point, Mandakini, you're making about the bank accounts is, of course, that is an important intervention. I feel much more in the rural context. But what we are seeing in Delhi, right, when we are talking to women like us, right, for them, this is about having that extra income. And they're not looking at it as, oh, like this is a, financial independence for me. I think, Urvashi, on your points about, what is it, what are the drivers actually? What is stopping them? 90% of our sample, literally, and especially in the focus group discussions, at some point, either it's the first reason or the second reason or the third reason is care. Somewhere or the other, I'm not saying it's always care. It could be the second reason. It could be the third reason. But it's part of that mix of reasons. And again, the reason I feel, Mandakini, why we haven't been able to solve this is because we've always looked for one answer. And we've always said, what is that one thing that if we change this one constraint, as economists, right, when we are looking at our econometric regression equations, I know Sindhuja is laughing because that's what she does. But, we always try to relax one constraint. And we say, acha, now what is happening to our FLFE? But it won't change until we relax all the constraints. So care is one, mobility is the second. And I think, yeah, and Rashmi ma'am spoke about it, at the bank, I've had the opportunity to work with the bank on, safe mobility in India. And we have been working with so many cities, right? And we found that at the end of the day, when the city comes in and makes a concerted effort, like say Chennai is doing, that's when you start to see the change in terms of the perception as well. And in Delhi also, slowly that is changing, but even now, a large portion of our sample, at least 40%, is saying that they have some sort of mobility constraint, particularly safety at night. And I think the third reason is around policies, and that was definitely a surprise for us, because when we saw that how much importance the women are placing on the corporate policy, we didn't expect that. We thought that, they would be okay with any sort of policy, or they may not actually look at policy with that much importance. But they said, no, if we don't have flexibility, if we don't have the opportunity to work from home, then they, so these are the constraints, so just responding to that.
Sindhuja, Urvashi, do you want to comment a little bit on the...
I think most of what I wanted to say is covered over here. Like rightly, like Mandakini said, bank accounts and all of that doesn't matter. But when we look at the data and we say how many mudra accounts do women own and are they taking entrepreneurial decisions or not, I think that's also a contrast that we need to look at. It's not just about spending within the households. Are they taking business decisions on their own? And how much of...
Are they? Are you seeing that?
I think so,
Yes,
to a large extent. I think World Bank's enterprise survey would tell us that they are. So it's not just about the household decisions.
Yeah. No, I think there is, none of these, like Mitali said, none of these is a single answer. And I think really, unless we start moving many pieces together, and I'm always reminded of the example in Madhya Pradesh, when they introduced 33% reservation for women in the panchayat. Everyone said, "ये tokenism है, वो तो husband, husband खड़ा कर रहा है, वो mother she's either the mother or the..." It took one round, because the moment you get a taste of your agency, then it's very. I think women get very, and that's why I feel like if we can solve for this entry, if there is a way for us to make sure that women get to taste work and the advantages of it early on, maybe we will set something in motion that will be quite different from, you have no idea what you miss. You have no idea what it can do for you. Okay. So Mitali mentioned care already, and that's the third part of the study that it reveals. Now, what surprised us hugely was that while care is a constant, whether you're working or you're not, women carry the disproportionate responsibility for care. Very few, only 4.6% of the women interviewed said creche at the workplace was a factor. Now, I'm stunned, not so much because you expect, that policymakers make it on the basis of some assumption. We are going ahead and solving for a problem that doesn't solve it for the person who's the main user. Then, I have a very, long-winded response to this, because I live in Sarvodaya Enclave, and if somebody gave me a creche in my office in Noida, I have to go from my home to the metro station with one child, one bag, one pram, one laptop, get to the metro station, go with the child to wherever, do the same routine there, do the way back, come back. Who's it solving for? And I think increasingly there's a feeling that the child belongs in the community, not in the office, right? So I was personally very surprised that women are not identifying creches in the office as one of the reasons for that helps them through work. They have, a large number have spoken about flexible hours. Even the women who work. So the ones who don't work don't say कि क्योंकि creche नहीं है मैं नहीं जा रही हूँ. The ones who work also rank childcare facilities as amongst the lowest. Only 7% have ranked it as an important factor. What does this say to us in terms of how we want to think about what we are solving for? And maybe Sindhuja.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this. Yeah. Actually, I'm not surprised. Not surprised at all, because in part I think because women are saying they need more flexible hours is because that is the only way they think they can manage, so to speak. We know that women spend more time, even if they're working, they don't spend disproportionately less time on care work at home. So flexibility is the only way that they can imagine managing their care responsibilities and paid work. And it's also in part, I think, a reflection of the systems or the lack of it around us. So if I don't see creches as a viable option, why would I rank it higher? To think that it's not even something that I can imagine as a viable option, that really speaks about the quality, affordability, accessibility of creches. And like you said, who is going to, carry the kid and go all the way to office and then manage all that? But other than that, I think it also shows us that it's not just childcare. We have a growing population of elderly as well. So it's not that you just have creches and that would solve for the care burden that women have. It's also the 120, 130 plus million elders who are at home, who you're also
and when
responsible
people
for.
are unwell and whatever, it's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
care.
yeah.
Pets. I mean, every home has a war when the child brings a pet home, because the mother is saying, "ये तुम अपने लिए लेके आए हो कि मुझे I have to look after it." I mean, there's an assumption that the mom will become the carer for the pet as well. So I think it's all care. Yeah.
So
sorry.
when, just to complete my point, but when we speak of flexibility, it sounds so right? But then are we, and actually who is going to pay the cost for flexibility? That is one thing we all need to, think of, especially as policymakers, because we've seen how if the burden of, or the cost of it is just on one head, which is women, or on just the employers, then it's going to inevitably lead to hiring biases. And we don't want that. We don't want that, especially in a city like Delhi, where we are seeing more women are in, regular paid salaried jobs, where the flexibility is more informal. So we don't want that to, codify into something that, okay, so let's hire less women. So, yeah.
Let me just, I think what I'm also going to caution is to say that we don't want this conversation to become a Christmas tree, because there are many parts to this. So yes, there is child care, elderly care, there is a lot of that, but we know from data, primarily women are talking about child care. Then there is other, I have aging parents, I have a husband, I have a child, so we all have all that. But primarily from the work perspective, it is child care, and I think creche and child care are two separate things. So one is this child who is a six-month-old baby who has to be taken with whatever the formula or whatever, and the whole pressure around breastfeeding is another drama. But then there is also the child is going to school and is coming back, and where is this child coming back to? Because you don't have, there are no norms, there is no child care, what we don't have is legislation and policies. We have people here who are called nannies, who neither are regulated nor are educated. So there is this whole dance that has to be danced, as I have done, where the nana nani, dada dadi, chacha, the whole world has to play this role. And I think, in fact, I would say these ladies are saying a creche is not important because A, they don't even know what reliable childcare looks like and what it means. Right, so we are starting from such a low base that they have no idea. And indeed, it's not just the first 2 years, and in fact, the government actually gives you this parental leave for 2 years, which you can take at any other stage. I can share my experience, but I can say that in my organization, there were a lot of policies that I wasn't aware of. And I was lucky enough at the right time to have a fantastic boss who was Dutch, who, therefore told me, you can actually do this. And I was like, oh my God, can I? Because I had been here a long time and I didn't know. So I did, maternity leave, annual leave, flexi hours, reduced hours, and it went on. And he said, are you ever going to come back? And I said, not till I have actually exhausted every possible leave. And then the grandparents kicked in. So all I'm saying is, childcare cannot be underestimated, and ultimately this is the future. We want, our son to be the Prime Minister of India. We want our daughter to be. This is aspirational. This is what we are. Yeah, right. A lot of these people have come to Delhi for the aspirations, and a lot of those aspirations are linked to the children, and they don't know what affordable, reliable childcare is. So this finding, I would say, is across the world, but I wouldn't say don't build creches anymore. I would, in fact, I wouldn't do that.
Okay, if I go in?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to respond to the creche question because actually a lot has been said and I would end up repeating the same thing. I want to come back to a couple of things you said, but before that, I just want to take this opportunity. Tell all of you students, you remember class में आपने कितना झगड़ा किया था कि पंचायत में पंचायत पति होते हैं. आपने सुना अनुराधा क्या कह रही है ना, मध्य प्रदेश में क्या हुआ. So look at the positive side. Because every time, I talk about that 73rd and 74th Amendment and they say, नहीं लेकिन मैम हाँ ये वो सब कुछ तो अब सुन लो, senior मैम से आ रहा है. So, no, I want to come back on a couple of points that you raised, Mitali. I think one of them is this thing about policy. And this report actually very interestingly talks about how it's important to have granular data at a local level in order to influence policy. And I was very struck by that, and I want to give you an anecdote. I love anecdotal evidence, even though, economists dismiss it. But so I have this young woman who works in my house as a domestic worker. She and her husband and family bought a little house somewhere where they had all the papers and they were told it was regularized and everything. They paid 4 lakhs and then it was bulldozed. The hotel near their house was not bulldozed. The fancy houses were not, but the poor people's houses all were. When they tried to fight back, they were told, "We throw you in jail." So anyway, they gave up and then they went and bought another thing later with money from the Pradhan Mantri's loans for women, vagera, unhone kharida. Now they could not get it inside the border of Delhi. So they bought it just at the border, Faridabad. Till recently, she could travel free. Mobility is a huge thing, right? Really, it is transformative for women. And to her, earlier she used to come to my house on a little scooty. And she loved the freedom. Then her family said to her, "Tum scooty kyun chalati ho? Free transport mein jao." And I was really annoyed with her, saying, "Why are you listening to your family on free transport? They are trying to stop your freedom on the scooty." But when she tried the free transport, she said to me, "Didi, traveling in air-conditioned comfort for half an hour, mujhe ticket nahi deni padti, I can relax, I can do something." That was great. Now, because she's not in the borders of Delhi, and her Aadhaar card is based in Assam, which is her village, she cannot get free mobility. Now look at this. This is a policy which is perfectly okay in terms of administrative state lines. If you want to do something for your state, why should you do it for the neighboring state? But look at the way in which it impacts the lives of the vulnerable. So this thing of granular data, I think, is really, really important in policy making.
The law of averages, when half your body is in, half your body is out of the microwave and you don't expect it to turn. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next point, which was again quite interesting, which is that families are far more supportive than we often assume around women and work. So the report says that of the non-working women, half of them say that their families have no problem with, like they're not working because they think it is not going to be approved or that they will not have support. Among the working women, the support is even higher, right? So of course family support plays a role for those who work, but looks like there is support for those who don't work. So if that is really the one, again, I was pleasantly surprised. But if that is the case, then what do you think? What do you think? Yeah.
So let me also just break this down a little bit more, in terms of what we actually found on ground. And this links completely with our discussion on care and also on mobility, actually. So, the first thing, Urvashi, I think just quickly reacting to what you said, we've done a 10-city study on the impact of free bus transport, and the lead author of that study is standing right there from my team, Abhishek. He's also the person who's done a lot of the hard work on this study. And very honestly, this is exactly the challenge we found in Karnataka. So in Karnataka also, to get the free bus, you have to be from there. So your Aadhaar card has to say that your address is in Karnataka. So this is across political ideologies, across state lines, that this kind of exclusion error, which we call in economics and policy, that happens. Delhi earlier was a very open scheme. Now this pink card has made it, so. And that impact is definitely being felt. Now, how does this link with family support? And how does care link with family support? It's exactly what Mandakini also just said. If I am choosing to have a child with my partner, very honestly, when I look at the young women and who we spoke to, say new mothers was one of the FGDs, and Vidisha is right here, she was with us, and all the FGDs. They are telling us, look, I can manage this if my mother comes and, handles for a few hours. Or I can manage this if, my mother-in-law is living with me. Like I live with my mother-in-law, and therefore the childcare gets split. What I found very surprising, the part I found surprising, was that not even one of them, even these young women in their mid-20s, early 30s, are saying my husband will take care of me. Like, it did not even occur to them that the family support. So when we said family support for the very young students, etc., like all the girls who are here, simply like all of you, is my father letting me go to college? It's literally coming down to father. If my father is okay for me to go to college, definitely I'm going, and as far as I can go. Because some of them expressed that, we don't want to go to South Campus, we wanted to go to Delhi University North Campus, and because our family was okay with it, and metro connectivity is there. So, see, as I'm always demonstrating, it's multiple things. You have the metro is safe in the perception, you have the first mile connectivity because your father agreed to drop you to the metro station in a car or two-wheeler or any sort of personal transport. You didn't have care responsibilities, so you could do it. And very honestly, even when we were preparing the archetypes of, what is the typical woman who is most likely to work and to continue to stay, like you mentioned, like in the first slide, when we talk about entry, re-entry. The woman most likely to stay through having the first child, especially, because the first child is very critical in the data. It's of course come out, and of course you know through practical experiences, Mandakini's talked about, that they are most likely to stay when they have a supportive family, where the family considers it to be the whole family's responsibility to take care of the child. And I'm talking about childcare again more because that of course came out more in our focus group discussions. But elder care is also equally important because a lot of women, especially at the peak of their career, who we spoke to, women leaders that we had consultations with, for them elder care is a very critical one because at that point they're ready to take on a CEOship or they're ready to take on a major leadership assignment, and then elder care comes in and there's a health responsibility, and of course at that point you emotionally also will not be. So the family support is almost as important as mobility infrastructure or care infrastructure, and that is where the social normative barriers are not shifting.
I think this is not surprising for me at all because, again, because I keep going back to data. When we look at data, time use data again tells us that across working women, non-working women, they are taking more care, right? But then when it comes to the family saying, I'm supportive, my first question would be, why are those 50% of the women not working then? Yes. What actually translates into a, हाँ ठीक है काम कर लो, like we initially were speaking about. हाँ ठीक है काम कर लो, to actually redistribute that care work. Yes. To say that ठीक है, I will also take up some work, and also it comes back again to how much of men's roles, how flexible are they? Are they able to take these, and will they not be judged? Will their performance not be judged? And then again, it comes back again to who is the primary earner and what is the cost of them facing a setback in their career because of this. So I think all of these things come together, and like most of what we've been discussing even till now is not that it's just care or just transport or all of those things. And I would also like to add an important point here about the main difference that we see between rural and urban, and how it affects even fertility aspirations for that matter, and how many kids women really want to have and or are able to have, and that difference, that gap is much smaller in rural areas. So they are able to manage to have, to work as well as, have the number of kids that they want to have, which women in urban areas are not able to do, because who is going to then stay back and take care of the kids, and are the family members then going, and we have nuclear families in cities like Delhi. So it's just the couple and the kid or kids, and more, increasingly it's just one kid, and even that is becoming very difficult to take care of because you have higher aspirations for your kids. So all those things weigh in.
We are coming close to time, but what I did want to highlight was that for the last 10 years, I've had this privilege of actually only working with young. Yeah. They're all in their early to mid-20s. A lot of them are here in the room today. And conversations with them just tell a very different story. And that for me is what keeps me optimistic and hopeful and excited to come to work every day. And there are days when I wake up feeling like, all these conversations are going to sound like dinosaur kind of conversations sometime round, because these girls are just having different conversations. Having said that, my biggest worry is that, at what point do they reverse right back to what you have grown up with, as opposed to, 18 months of what we try and do with them, because we are, of course, telling them, like, you have to have a job, right? Whatever you may have been brought up with for 22 years, you have to know financial independence, money is the first line of defense. Forget about anything else that you have in your head. And today there's enough evidence to pull women into, or get weaned into that thinking. But what I did want to close with was, and I was struck even when Dr. Singh was speaking, and of course it's out there in the narrative, that flexible hours, childcare, everything, that conversation is only associated when we talk about women. Yes. And, my closing thought is that if we don't change this narrative to working families, and also what it means for flexibility or opportunities that will open up for men if women have a different kind of opportunities. So with that, anything that you would like to add before we close?
I think that's a great point to close on. Maybe very quickly what I can say, and I would have really liked to come in with an anecdote, but what I will say is that this is a whole of community approach. This is a whole of government. She mentioned that, but it is a whole of community, because ultimately what we are looking for is a green, sustainable, productive workforce that includes men and women. And I think you cannot discount that, right? I think it's important. The second thing I'll say is the importance of role models and being able to say, you can do this. And I think schools, colleges, right? You have to be able to demonstrate to women that there is possible, it can be done. And I would say, and I really feel that's very important. Finally, I think we do, and this is where I can, sometimes I work in an organization where you have people from many nationalities. And it's very interesting where some of us say, oh my God, the guilt eats you up, but there are others, it doesn't, right? So the social norming, right? The norming of it, that this is, and maybe I can close with a quick anecdote. So when my son was very young, he went for a play date and he came back and he said, his mother doesn't go to office. And no, it was, and in this case, the nanny was a professor, was still working, the mother is working. So it wasn't that I was doing something exceptional, it was normal for him. So maybe, I don't know, when he grows up, it continues to be normal, but I think that's something we can do. And data, evidence, policies, there is a sweet spot where it will all come together. I'm very hopeful. Yeah. But I would say we need to continue to have these conversations.
We have to push it every day, Radhika, Aaradhana, Swati, they're all looking at each other and smiling, because this is what we do every day. Keep making sure that the hope doesn't die, and that the spark that, we are trying to instill in young women actually carries through against all these barriers and hurdles that we do. But yes, of course, before we...
Not to destroy your wonderful closing line, which was great. No, I just wondered, because we have experts on the stage, whether there may be anything in also researching employers, the kind of opportunities, the kind of spaces they make, because that's a big barrier too. So maybe you want to think about
next thing. But with that, please join me in thanking our panel for the most insightful discussion.
Thank you, panelists. What a lively discussion. I don't think there was a moment when we felt that we could not connect to the narratives that took place. Group photo. Please accept a token of appreciation. Mitali Nikore. Urvashi ma'am. Mandakini. Thank you so much. You have just heard what the data tells us, and it is clear that the barriers are real, layered, and stubbornly persistent. But data without action is just rhetoric. We move now from evidence to accountability. Our second panel is on From Evidence to Action, Solving the Women's Work Puzzle. It brings together practitioners and policymakers who work on the levers in education, workplaces, care systems, and government. Our panelists are Aaradhana Dalmia, immediate past chairperson, YFLO, and co-lead FLO National Policy and Advocacy Team. Ipsita Kathuria, founder and CEO, Talentnomics India. Kanta Singh, country representative, UN Women India. Professor Swati Pal, Principal, Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi. Dr. Farzana Afridi, Professor of Economics, Indian Statistical Institute. The panel will be moderated by Anuradha Das Mathur.
Okay, I'm sorry for being the constant voice on this stage, but you'll just have to bear with me. but I'm again delighted to moderate this panel. And you know, like we promised that we have to get beyond reports sitting in dusty corridors. So we spent a little bit of time talking about what this data and the report might highlight. And really the next step is that if all of this is going on, then what is it that we can do collectively to actually change the picture, move the needle a little bit on what we are saying today. And like I said, at some point these panels should not be needed. At some point these conversations should sound like they're from a world that none of us recognize. So with that, can I please ask you all to join me in welcoming our panel before I get started? Okay, so unlike the last panel, I am going to come to each one of you with some of the findings and what they say. And I think we'll start right at the beginning, which is where young women are graduating from. So, Professor Pal, this report has said, and you heard the panel before, that people are getting degrees. And you know, we are all educating people in their undergraduate courses, but there's an 80% chance that those girls are not actually going to be in the workforce in a sustained manner at all, and a large number will not take their first job. Now, I know that the good colleges in Delhi have placement processes and the girls actually get jobs. But from where you sit and what you see of the girls, conversations over the years, what is your take on this report and its findings that more than 75% of the women who don't work actually just never went into the workforce to begin with?
Right, first and foremost, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to be part of this fabulous panel. Frankly speaking, I was dying to get up while the first panel was on and kind of speak up at different points of time, and had to really control myself. I wanted to keep putting up my hand and say, can I? You know, but there was so much I wanted to say. I'm part of a college for women, Delhi University, Janki Devi Memorial College. When I joined the college 3 decades ago. So there were just 1,200 students and we were 90 teachers. Today we have 4,000 students and we are more than 165 teachers. So that's a good thing. I mean, I'm very happy to see that the numbers when it comes to students joining, girl students joining colleges has increased so exponentially. That is a very good thing. But as the previous panel said, that there is a disconnect, and maybe we shouldn't look really for the connect between formal education and employability or people joining the workforce, women joining the workforce. I want to interpret your question a little differently, and I want to talk about the fact that I think somewhere there is, and I've said this at various forums, that the bridge between school teaching and college teaching, you know, we need to bridge that gap. We need to create a bridge. We need to bridge a gap. And some of the things that the previous panel talked about in terms of mindset, that has to begin at school itself. This whole thing about भैया अपना plate glass क्यों उठाएगा, तुम उठा लो, you know, you pick up the plate and the glass for the brother, or the fact that, you know, भाई बच्चा है तो माँ ही देखभाल करेगी. That kind of a mindset needs to be broken from school itself. I think it's too much of a pressure to expect girls at the age of 18, when they've already formulated certain ideas, to suddenly change overnight. The curriculum does not help. I'm being very honest. There are a lot of constraints that we in Delhi University, which should be perhaps one of the most liberal of places, and it perhaps still is in a certain way, but I can say for a fact that there is no great support, and I'm saying this rather fearlessly, despite the fact that there is a video on here, but I will still say it because I'm known to do these foolish things, which is that if you want to teach a student subversion, do you really have the freedom to do so? So I'll give a very simple example. The student is taught Sita as a kind of a model, figure. Is the student told about the Sri Ramayan? Is the student told about, so the student is said that, you know, Draupadi is a victim, and then she looked at Krishna for help and so on, and he, by the way, did it rather late, I think. Anyway, but are we allowed to teach Kiran Nagarkar's A Bedtime Story, which completely subverts the idea? Do we really have that intellectual freedom even today, when we are decades away from colonial rule and other mindsets and so on? Do we really have that intellectual freedom? I want to ask this question because it is all related. Because if we want to institutionalize the whole notion of women's freedom, women's ability to join the workforce, what are we doing from the smallest thing? It is not small really, but the thing about breaking mindsets, are we really doing it in a structured fashion from the very beginning, from the home, then to the school, and then to college? Are we doing that? No. Are we doing it through the curriculum? No, we aren't. It's a SOP. Actually, there was a glorious period in the 90s, and I come from JNU, that's my alma mater. Unfortunately, much ill has been talked about it now, but at the time when I was in JNU, yes, we did have that intellectual freedom. We did have that ability to think through things and to interrogate, which is what education is supposed to be doing. So my question, I'm kind of asking you a counter question, which is, are we really succeeding in building up critical faculties to interrogate and negotiate with the kind of stereotypes that we are expected to live up to? We may call a person educated, but what really is this education doing has to be answered. It's not enough to say people are joining educational institutions. What we need to ask is what is happening in these educational institutions in the year 2026. Somewhere I feel we have regressed, and so perhaps some of the steps that we took in the 90s for women joining, I don't know, I think there should be some data on this. Can we do a kind of a comparative study in terms of population of women in the 1990s and the number of women then in the workforce, and the population of women now and now in the workforce, and then link it to education? I think we need to ask these questions, which we don't. So I'm sorry I've not answered your question.
No, I think you have answered the question where you're saying that, if the mindset is an issue, then we are not addressing that enough in our education institutions, even the ones that are focused on women. And I mean, the only thing I will say, Swati, is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing, right? I think, I mean, at least I know that Radhika does that in her program. We are doing it in ours, where teaching women confidence. Because there are some women who are thinking about what they would like to do, but they don't have the courage and the confidence. And I agree with, I mean, my day job is in policy consulting, and I believe quite strongly that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you go really hard at social revolutions, you'll get a pushback. But I think there is a way for this change to be like like the drip, 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 drip every day. So I'm completely with you, and I think what we are trying to do at the postgraduate level definitely needs to go to the graduate level, and then below that. And I think I think textbooks are going both ways, right? They're saying that the brother doesn't need to pick up the plate, but it's saying several other things. I'm going to go to Farzana next to just ask that you have done so much work, Farzana, on social norms and how they impact women and work. Are there some factors that you feel are almost non-negotiable in general and in Delhi in specific for this data or this research like this to throw up different results, next time round?
So I'm trying to figure out.
Chal right, I just tap on it.
It's open.
Yeah. So thank you so much for having me here. This is an important report which adds to the existing narrative on factors that affect women's decisions when it comes to the participation in the labor market. And as we know from data, urban women in India participate at lower rates in employment than rural women. And this is something that we've seen in the data from from time immemorial, at least from the time that India started collecting these data on labor force participation. So I'm actually going to focus on two things and give you specific examples, because my takeaway from the panel is what is it that we can do to address the situation, rather than thinking of issues and what are the reasons why we're seeing the situation as it is. So what my take from the years of work that I've been doing on this has been that there are two sides to this issue. One is the supply side, as we say in economics, which is from the perspective of the woman who's supplying her labor, who's constrained not just by individual factors, but also her family, her community, that is going to influence whether she is working or not, but also the kind of work that she's doing. And the other side is from the employer's perspective, which is what kinds of jobs are available, what are the work conditions that are available, what is the wage, what is the salary that I'm going to get, and how am I going to get to this place of work, right? So there are two buckets in which typically economists put these, think of the demand side, think of the supply side, and essentially what you see is an equilibrium, which is the intersection of the two of them, which is going to determine both the quantity and the price. So the quantity here is how many women end up in the labor market, and what is the wage rate or the salary that they get at the, if they're working. So just to give you a few examples, from the supply side, recently we've done a lot of interventions with women who are in urban areas, who are educated in the sense of not necessarily highly educated. I'm not talking about women who are postgraduate and PhDs or have professional skills, but women who aspire to at least complete undergraduate degree or have finished their 12th grade. And that's the cusp at which women tend to decide, am I going to continue studying or am I going to get married? And that is really the inflection point. And in India, we have a challenge of not being able to collect data which follows women through that transition period, because that is the most crucial transition period. And we often see that the moment a woman shifts from being unmarried to being married is when you see them dropping out of the labor market or not participating in the labor market. The critical junction is not childbirth in India, because childbirth actually happens very quickly. It happens within a year of marriage or within 2 years of marriage, and your decision of whether you're going to be in the labor market or not is already taken at the point of marriage itself. So so what we do in economics, or at least I do, is a lot of what we call randomized controlled trials, which means that I'm going to randomly sample localities, let's say in Delhi. This is one study where we would go to both men who have similar levels of education and women with similar levels of education. And one intervention that we did was to say, are you looking for jobs or not? And this is an age category which is similar for men and women. So these are about 18 to 35-year-olds, so they're relatively young, at least 12th grade pass. And if they say that yes, they're looking for jobs, what we did was we provided them access to a digital platform where they could look for jobs. And we did this over this study where the intervention happened. We have another group where they don't get access to the platform, and we follow them over a year or so. And we collect very detailed information on how they search for jobs, whether they ended up with being employed, what kinds of work were they doing, was it salaried, was it casual, and so on. So it was very interesting when we did this, this was the study we completed last year. We find that women tend to benefit from having these informational frictions, so to speak, which is, where do I go to look for work? How do I apply for work? And this is, of course, conditional on them looking for work. But this is with some minimum education levels. These are grey-collar jobs, these are white-collar jobs, all kinds of jobs. And we find that they're also able to shift from more precarious work, which is casual, going on to doing, more likely to be doing salaried work. Men, in contrast, in the same experiment where they're comparable, they figured that, their expectations of the labor market were not aligned with reality. And so they stay on in the jobs that they already are, or they reduce their search. But what I'm trying to tell you here is that there is a bunch of women out there who are looking for work. There's other work that we have, that I've done, where mostly our friends as women are our family and relatives who do not give us information about employment opportunities. And there's this whole literature, research in economics which will tell you the single most important determinant of whether you end up with a job or not is whether you have people in your network who also work. Because that's how you get information about vacancies, that's how you get job referrals, and addressing that constraint for women becomes increasingly important. Another example, we worked with a skilling company in Delhi, again urban, as well as in Bangalore, where we again conducted an intervention where we designed a skill training program for women who were specifically interested in beauty and wellness sector. And what we did for them was to say not just the hard skills, but also we are going to give you additional skills which are digital, in the sense, how do you market yourself? How do you reach out to customers? And again, following them about a year later, we see women who got these additional skills. They're working longer, they're more likely to have their own beauty businesses, and they are earning higher. So that's on the supply side. All I'm trying to say over here is, let's think of ways in which we can address these constraints. On the demand side, there are many occupations in which you see a lot of women who can join. So for example, again, here I'm not talking about terribly educated, but low-skilled women. You look at the garment sector. The garment sector has a large number of women, but where are they working? They're all on the operation lines. They're not at the higher management level. And this is something that I say all the time, that for women to aspire to get into the labor market, to work, they have to see women doing well. They have to see women at higher levels. And that also is true here, for those of us who are in academia, those of us who are in the corporate sector. If you're going to see women always doing, the jharu pocha kind of work, then why would I enter that particular occupation? So we were working with these women, and we are doing work with H&M, which is the global company, working with factories in Bangladesh, Pakistan, in India. And we see even at the operator level, the gender gap in wages is very, very persistent. Women are not asking for promotions. Women are not asking for upskilling. Women are not asking their supervisors, who most often, almost 90% of the time are male, for, career progression. So again, I think the point that was made in the beginning is, what is it that we can do to enable women within the workplace if you don't make the conditions of women who are already working better? And by conditions, I just don't mean work conditions, it's the returns. For us economists, it is all about returns. If I don't get a high enough salary or high enough wage, why should I step out and suffer, sexual harassment, all kinds of issues on my way to work when I can just live, more comfortably within the home? So, and I'm not doing nothing. I'm investing in my children's human capital. There are some returns that I'm getting from the work that I'm doing within the home. So, I think this goes back to what the previous panel said then, that there is no single solution. We have to think cohesively in terms of both the supply side and the demand side, and how we can think of interventions which might be small, but together could add up in making substantive difference.
I just want to come in for a second, Farzana, because there's, while all of this that we're talking about, of course, is true, if you just spend a minute thinking about the world that we live in terms of media, in terms of movies, ads, books, podcasts, films, reels, the amount of content today that is urging women to think a little bit about themselves as individuals before. So it was this one line that you said, because somewhere our credo before we started the program, and I mean honestly it's personal to me, and I hate to admit it, but I've had to question it a few times in the last few years, because I don't think it's everybody's reality. My belief was that dignity, I mean, if you're born, you deserve dignity. I don't think everybody believes that. But our program was born out of that if you're a woman, I mean, everybody, frankly, anyone who's born, I think you deserve to live with dignity. Everything else is, you can make trade-offs for it. And the belief that if you need independence, therefore, to live a life of dignity, then it's financial, physical, emotional, and intellectual independence is what we started thinking about. And somewhere, the next level of thinking was that financial independence gives you just that wee bit more of agency to be independent on all the other fronts. And which is why the core here is, listen, I don't care about anything else, you have to work. You have to work and you have to have some money. Right? Now, when you say, why should I go out? That there are enough women today who still feel, I can stay at home and I'm looking after things. It comes with so much indignity every day. So, where does that, what can we do as a society? And where does that need to start? That, this sense of self, which I think is more deep-rooted even than before the actions that we do, that, you pick up the table and you do whatever and things like that. That I really grapple with that.
If you want me to answer that, I would say in all the conversation that we are having currently, we seem to always put the onus on the woman to change her attitude. But I want to say that we also need to engage with the men, because it's really important to engage with the men in order for us to be encouraged also to think differently, which is what ma'am was talking about as well, right? And to question existing norms and attitudes, it is not sufficient that women question it. It is also important that men question it, because that's how society can change. So there is a very interesting study that was done in Haryana a few years ago, where they did exactly this, which was to change curriculum in the school. And then they found that, when they were engaging both with the boys at a younger age, so engaging with boys at a very young age to value the work that their mothers or their sisters are doing, but also not just value it, but do it themselves. Where then you sort of inculcate gender parity within the home, and that's potentially then going to translate into gender parity outside the home, because then everything begins at home. And there is this very nice study also done in the US context, where a macroeconomist looked at data over many, many years, and basically she concluded from the data analysis was that if a man had a mother who has worked, then the probability that his wife would be working is also higher. And this is, data over many decades. And she theorizes on that. And basically she proves that the theoretical model holds in the sense of having this intergenerational transmission of norms within the home, which translates into workforce participation for women.
Okay, yeah. I'll just take a minute. I just want to share something that for a very long time I used to be a great promoter of the fact that, why is paternity leave only for 15 days? We're not empowering the men to look after the children. Until in my own college, which now has a fair number of male teachers, so when I asked one of them, I discovered that the chap had waltzed off for a holiday, So it's a little disappointing. I'm sorry to be sharing this. I'm really sorry, but honestly speaking, this whole thing of acculturation in terms of men in understanding that, just as the woman didn't produce the child alone, she doesn't have to look after the child alone. This kind of, that kind of mentoring and that kind of teaching has to begin right from the start.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, I'm going to come to you, Ipsita, because, the report has constantly spoken about flexibility and, what kind of norms need to exist in workplaces for, if we start in schools and colleges and make them want to work, and then we are creating the right conditions, somewhere the employer and the conditions that they provide. And you've done so much work over the years, both with women in the workplace and in leadership positions, but also with employers. What needs to be done to shift the needle?
First of all, thank you for inviting me to be in this panel. So I'm really glad to be with this esteemed panel here and talking to these youngsters. One thing that I want to, before I answer your question, I really want to stress, the points that you made, that it is absolutely critical to discuss this issue with both men and women. If we women sit and discuss these issues amongst women, we are not going to change the needle very much. And that's been my firm belief. I have worked in public sector in India. I have worked in private sector in India. I have worked in an international organization in USA. Everywhere, the theme was the same. There were so many talented women at the level. Of course, when I joined SAIL, not many women joined the steel industry, but when we went to leadership level, there were hardly any. And what was the reason? It was not because women are not ambitious. These women, educated women, were very ambitious. It was not because they lacked the talent. It was because they just did not have the supportive environment that needed for them to grow to leadership level. And what does that mean? That means the mindset of half the world was different. So if we want to change things, we need to start with mindset change. And, and coming to your questions in terms of flexibility, yes, it's a big thing, and especially after COVID, everybody wants flexibility, and organizations are giving flexibility. How do we make it from discretionary managerial privilege to a mandate? I don't think there's an easy answer to this. If you just want to take Delhi, for example, Can Delhi mandate flexi working across all organizations, all sectors? There's so many different sectors that are existing here. There's retail, which needs different kind. There's IT services, there's manufacturing, there's, medical services. So I think it needs to be studied a little more in depth to say that what kind of flexibility would work well. But on the other hand, if the government starts making a noise that flexibility is something which should be encouraged for men and women both, and that managers have to have the solid reason to deny, flexibility, that might start making people a little aware of it. But to really make it a mandate, I think more work has to be done to, sectorally to see what is needed. Can this sector do work from home? That's one thing. Okay, so that is what I call the policy. I have an acronym here, I might have to look at it. So I call it the perfect solution. So P for policy mandate, which needs these kind of other work for it to happen. E is a much easier thing to do. It's actually empowering employees by recognizing them. It's the employers. It's employers' recognition and award. This is something which may not be such a difficult thing to do if maybe FICCI, maybe CII gets together with the Delhi government to do a kind of a thing, award ceremony, to say which of the organizations are more gender equitable, have more women there, are providing better conditions, and recognize them publicly. That might be an incentive for others to start looking at, is it something that will attract people to them, that will help them own image with their customers. So I feel employer recognition could be one of the things. What is the R? R is something which organizations need to do, and this is something I've been talking about a lot, but not much has moved. Abroad it has happened. I see in US a lot more of this happening. It's restructuring of work in the organization. We have very standard job description for all our roles, So all this, but organizations can look at all the jobs and say, this job can be part-time. This job can be done on a shared basis. This job can be work from home. So there are kinds of jobs which you can actually define and say that, this doesn't require somebody to come in every day to work. But there are some jobs people need to come in every day to work. So therefore, that part has to be done by the organization if you want flexibility. Maybe women would join some job, maybe some men would join flexible jobs, they're looking at it. Okay, so that's R. F is the family support. We've talked enough about it. I don't want to talk about it when I talk about family benefits. Any benefit that's extended should be a family benefit extended to both the man and the woman. Whether it's the creche, we are talking about creche for women. We have built so many creches. Why for women? Why not, have the men who have small children leave the children in their creche? Why should the creche be women? We are just enhancing the stereotype that exists, that caregiving is only a woman's role. So I feel any of the benefits, you're giving maternity leave. I was one of the person who was very upset when maternity leave was extended 3 months to 6 months. Because I knew it was going to start affecting women, especially in small scale industry. Where do they have the money to carry 6 months thing? Why couldn't we extend it as a parental leave? Yeah? And make it compulsory that this much of paternity leave has to be taken or lost. It happened even in Finland. They were not being able to do it, but now they've become so advanced in it because they made it take it or lose it policy. So this parental leave that we are introducing 3 days, 7 days, as you were saying, somebody will go on a holiday or go to a party or whatever. But if you really are serious, increase the parental leave to a substantial amount. 3 months, maybe 2 months, or 3 months, equal. So that the father also is, the message is father is also a caretaker. So that's the F, that any family-related benefit should be extended to both the parties and should not be only a woman's only thing. Because till the time we ask for all these privileges as women's privileges, we will keep losing out on it. I mean, I know I may be unpopular in saying this, but I'm pretty against this menstrual leave which is coming because
we are
not talking about that. Why should we demand that leave? Men also have other issues. Somebody may have a stomach issue. I don't know. You have casual leave. You have so many other leaves. Take it. If we keep asking for privileges, we cannot build that credibility to be equal partners at work. So I think I'm very much for it. So I don't know where I've left my FC.
It doesn't matter. Okay. Okay. I'm going to come to Kanta. If you will talk to us a little, because I think a lot of what Ipsita has spoken about alludes to the caregiving role that women assume and have been responsible for. I know that you've done a lot of work on moving care to a social infrastructure solution. Talk to us a little bit about that, how you think about that in terms of your experience, and is there a lesson for Delhi and for India to solve for more women in the workforce?
Thank you. I think with Mitali sitting here, she should be the right person to speak about care. Because there are young women here, I'd like to speak to them more. But anyways, you asked the questions, I'll respond. Thank you for inviting me. These are all academic people, and I'll just not fit in here. I'm a practitioner, so I have just... Okay. I am going to speak about what I have seen in my work on women's employment. And a couple of one-liners before I talk about the issue. One is that I think women are ready for jobs. So to say that women are not ready is not right. Women are ready, the employers are not ready for women. That means they don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the mindset, they don't have the middle management ready to manage women. And so that's point number one. Secondly, I think our mothers, because of whatever reasons, and because of their own upbringing, have started pushing women to study, go to colleges, to work, but not push them enough to say financial independence is the key. They still put marriage there. So they are preparing our daughters for marriage. Because that's the ultimate goal, that everything will be beautiful once you get married. So the lie that our mothers continue to tell us is problematic. And I want to tell all the young girls here that listen to them, but apply your own mind. That the jillat that you have to face, seriously, is going to be tough. The academicians who are sitting here, I'm going to request them to share their own stories with the girls. We do not share it enough. The problems that these teachers, the professors faced when they started 30 years back, the girls don't know about that. They think they come in beautiful saris, looking like this. Seriously, they don't know how they came in DTC buses, leaving 2 children behind, cooking for their husbands and families, and preparing themselves for teaching. And because the teachers don't tell them those struggles. So it's going to be tough, girls. Nothing is easy. But listening to somebody who says, get out of my house, is the ultimate insult. So always have your own house. Always have and also, 2 more things. For the last 6 months, I'm following 2 women. One is writing about very beautiful things, saying, बहनों को भाई से नहीं मांगना चाहिए property. ठीक है? And she keeps giving mixed messages. She has 338,000 followers on Facebook. And all beautiful, nice things as women should say. हमारा साथ इतना अच्छा है husband wife का, हमने बहुत प्यार से, बहुत इससे करते करते हम यहाँ तक पहुँच गए हैं 40 साल. ठीक है? And then you keep looking at men who are commenting that. Oh, you are the real woman, real ideal women for this generation. Look at those women who are teaching कि शादी जरूरी नहीं है. दूसरा एक लड़की है जो बहुत बोल्डली लिखती है कि मेरे लिए फाइनेंशियल इंडिपेंडेंस बहुत ज़रूरी है. She gets only hate messages every day. तुम कमला बसीन की चेली हो, तुम ये हो, तुम ये हो. You know, just imagine all of us were sitting there. हम कमला बसीन के fans हैं. Seriously, all of us. उसको रोज पढ़ना. मैं पढ़ इसलिए रही हूँ कि I really want to understand where this no work and work thing comes from. Because we don't want to see independent women. Because they are a threat to men. They are a threat to society. They have their own mind. They'll speak up. They'll become women who are stripping themselves in Iran and say, मारो मुझे, मैं तैयार हूँ इसके लिए. But मैं वापस बुर्के में जाने को तैयार नहीं हूँ. मैं ये नहीं कह रही कि बुर्का पहनो या नहीं पहनो. That is individual choice. But girls who don't want to use those things, there should be a choice for that. On mindset, ma'am, I just wanted to say that I have seen it changing every day. And Haryana is a perfect example of that. We keep saying Haryana is the most patriarchal state. Don't you say that? 2010, the Commonwealth Games. Geeta Fogart wins a medal. In next 1 month, 2,200 akhadas came for women in Haryana. So what is triggering that? One is fame, money, and also parents का नाम अखबार में बेटी के साथ. I have also seen in my work ITI girls who have started getting salary for 3 months, 11,000, 10,000, 9,000. 3 months salary, parents don't want them to come back home. So mindset changes like this. We don't need centuries for that. It's just that we need the right incentives. Again, going back to Haryana, steel factory, Jindal Steel Factory, and it has been documented by NITI Aayog as a great practice. Of course, we had to work with panchayats, we had to work with fathers, we had to work with mothers to get those girls there. First time in an all-male factory, we employed 100 women after a lot of training, 4 months training. 90 girls are still working after 8 years to 10 years now, 15 to now today is 26. I had to go village by village, get the girls to see the factory, get the fathers to see the factory, get the panchayats to see the factory, that girls will be safe. I had to work with Mrs. Deepika Jindal to say, can you put a washroom here, can you put a training room here, can you put a restroom here, not restroom, मतलब क्या common room क्या बोलते हैं वो, and can you put a separate dining hall for these girls. Stainless steel factory. I am also on the jury of the Indian Steel Association for 3 years. There's been no improvement, but I'm going there to just keep harping on the same point that you need to bring leadership here. On care, it's a slightly complex issue. One is women don't want to leave that domain. Mera bacha, meri family, mera pati, mera ye, mera. But seriously, because हम तो husband को बोलते ही नहीं. I see it in my office every day. Seriously, I'm not joking. मेरा Amazon का पैकेट की डिलीवरी है, can I work from home? मेरे फादर को हॉस्पिटल लेके जाना है, can I work from home? उनके हस्बैंड भी काम कर रहे हैं, but because their jobs are not flexible, these women are taking it upon themselves to say, my job is flexible, I can work from home. I have an important meeting with the government, I want you here, right? So flexibility is very good, but flexibility only by women is not good enough. The same flexibility has to be given to men so that they can also go to PTM, they can take their dogs to vet, they can do whatever. I'm saying सब कुछ मेरे पास ही क्यों है ये सारी जिम्मेदारी? किसी के मरने की, जीने की, खाने की, पीने की, बच्चे की. And I am under pressure in my office and कोई मेरे ऑफिस का है तो नहीं. ये मैं छुट्टी नहीं लेती. Bad example. I'm a bad example, but very bad. I'm admitting. But I'm also saying, and मुझे कहा जाता है कि ये टीम तुमसे सीख रही है गलत. You are in a leadership position. You should be demonstrating right things. Very true. But मैंने कहा जब मुझसे right चीजें भी तो नहीं सीख रहे ना वो. कि मुझे घर पे जरूरत नहीं. I don't. My child is not sick. My family doesn't need me today. Maybe tomorrow I will need, but today there's no need. I enjoy working with the team. I want to come to office. Why can't I come to office and work here? And for me, it is not work. It's my passion. If I see these many young women, I don't need to go home tonight. It's that kind of a passion in me. Why do I have to work from home then? Sitting, कुकुर की सीटी बज रही है, कोई delivery वाला आ रहा है. I don't want to do that, right? अब कोई दरवाजा नहीं खोलता घर में, मुझे उठना पड़ता है in the middle of the call. So why would I do that? So मैं कह रही हूँ कि वो आपकी अपने घर की situation सबकी अलग है. And मैम की मदर काफी दिनों से बीमार है, but she is the primary caregiver. If I don't have that responsibility, why would I take that? So flexibility, care has to be shared. As you said, ma'am, husband ने भी बच्चे पैदा किया, उसका भी है. और वो point, we all young women here who are going to be mothers, or I'm also saying शादी और बच्चे is not the ultimate truth. That's an incident in your life. That's a major happening in your life. But that's not your life. If you are happy being alone, if you are happy being single, please choose that option. Nobody should force you. ठीक है, शादी अच्छी बात है, कोई अच्छा companion मिल जाए, but in most cases that is not. But look, seriously, in most cases, I see my friends being so unhappy. We have a group in UN, women in UN, जिनमें हम बैठ के बात करते हैं. Young बच्चों की क्या-क्या problems हैं? Seriously, I didn't face those problems because I got married 40 years back. हमारे टाइम की problems अलग थी. आजकल बहुत तरह की अलग problems हैं. So सोच समझ के जाइएगा, लेकिन कभी भी अपनी freedom, that is financial independence, compromise नहीं.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. No prompting. This is, I'm saying this to all the Vedika scholars. There was no prompt. This is her advice to you. Aaradhana, I think we are really so well poised for the wrap up. That, there is mindset, there is policies, there is the solution that needs to come, putting all of this together. Given that you've done such incredible work for the last year, focusing on a lot of stuff to do with young women, but women, work, and society. What do you think, as someone who has, in some ways represents businesses, what can business and the rest of us do together to maybe solve for the entry and some of the other things that we spoke about?
Thank you, Anuradha, for that, for those generous words, and thank you to each one of you and to all the panelists for being here. When we conceptualized this study last year, a year back actually, it came from a lot of personal experiences, observing my peers, that I felt that YFLO Delhi needs to do a study like this. And this was only a dream to imagine that a year later we would be sitting in a room full of so many stakeholders and people from organizations that are working towards achieving the same goal and discussing this. So truly a heartfelt thank you to each one of you for being here today. I'll add one more dimension to what all of you have mentioned. And I talk about this from personal experience and from observing all the women around me. Women also don't demand sometimes. Like if we have a baby, we are so afraid to demand that no, I cannot stay at home. I'm a well-educated, highly achieving, well-qualified person. I need to get out of the house. I need to start working once again. I need to go back to my work. We are also sometimes afraid to ask and demand for things that actually, I don't think people don't want to give us, but it's just that we are not going to, easily ask for this kind of support system. We're not going to be like, it's our thing. It's not my thing. So don't be afraid to stand up and ask. People will actually probably come and support you. Somebody definitely will, but don't be afraid to stand up and ask. I think this is also something that, when you talk about that linkage between what's happening to women after class 12 and, tracking them, I think this is also something that they're just not taught to do, like to stand up and demand ki, I need this support and I'm trying to do something for which I need the support to, just give it to me. Just like we give it to a man, right? A man has a wife who he comes home to and everything is ready. So, like, somebody said, imagine if a woman had a wife, so it would just change the world. So just that, asking your husband or everybody around you that, this is normalize this kind of support. But I think when we saw the results that came out of this study, and of course a lot of it is not surprising, but I think for us it was important to get this granular data to try and understand what are the solutions that as an organization like FICCI we can propose to local governments. And one of the things that I think definitely that we want to start with is this idea that when young girls are out of high school, in college, can we at least start giving them a flavor of being in the workplace? Can we start pushing this idea of internships, of getting that first job? Because once they start doing that, a lot of the things that are complicated will begin to fall into place. Once more and more women start getting jobs, entering the workforce, a lot of the questions around care, around transportation, everybody around them will have no choice but to find the solutions. So instead of putting the burden, I feel, entirely on corporates or entirely on policymakers, I think it's the first thing that we can all do is to just encourage women to start entering the workforce. And I'll give you an anecdotal this thing. I did my master's from the Delhi School of Economics, and I did my undergrad from the University of Pennsylvania. Crazy person. But so when I was doing my undergrad, there was a whole mechanism in the university about getting internships from the moment you were a sophomore, no matter what you were studying. I was studying history. Even for me, there were options that if you want to get internships, these are the avenues. But when I came to Delhi University, and I was not in the economics department, I was in sociology, etc. Even after master's degree, there was nothing. There was no recruiting happening on campus for us. Like 5 people from my batch decided to cold call companies and be like, are there jobs that we can apply to? We created this list, this database, but there was no system. So I think there are still a lot of structural things that can be added in our education system, also in our higher education system, that just no matter what field you're from, no matter who you are, you can at least start thinking about, okay, मैंने पढ़ लिया, अब मेरी क्या skills है, identify it, how can I get a job in this, how can I actually have a career, how can I make... So I think that kind of granular work is very important, and it's not impossible to do, and especially with technology now, it's very possible to do and replicate. So I think we need to provide those kind of solutions to young girls and open up this world for them, because the moment they start stepping out, things will start changing. So I think that's the beginning.
We've been, Aaradhana and I have been talking, and we've actually spoken to the government also, saying that, and I think as a college, maybe you can comment on it, that Delhi University, India now has the option of a 4-year undergrad. Is there an opportunity for us to think of a pilot where year 4 is compulsory in a pilot, and that 4th year is work?
So 4th year's already started.
Yeah.
In the 4th year.
So what you're saying is that if there is an option, if we can create this pilot where the 4th year is actually a work year, right, and industry will offer the job.
That's fantastic. But I just wanted to kind of get back to you about the fact that things under the NEP, which is very, very controversial and contentious, and I don't want to get into that because then I'll keep everybody here forever. But the fact is that yes, there is now a lot of emphasis on placement, and again, as you said, not just placements for commerce and economics students or engineering students or whatever, but also opportunities for internships for humanities and arts and liberal arts students. So that is one thing, that is one positive change I think that is happening, and I see a lot of people, for example, a lot of my students entering into the social service sector also as interns. Again, that's a very healthy sign. The other thing that you said was about all of us in response.
I just give me 1 minute because Ms. Roy has to leave.
Okay.
So can I ask her to just speak and we can continue the conversation right after?
Sure. I'll just end in a minute. But okay. I just wanted to say that I think all of us in responsible positions are trying to make a change by speaking out fearlessly and sharing our stories, as you said, with our students. And my biggest The success story was a girl from Haryana who, in my very first year as a teacher, I sort of converted her into a rebel. So she left home and she made something out of herself. It was a huge step in those days. Today she is, of course, gladly embraced by her family. So I think we really need to take our job seriously in terms of speaking out.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, Farid, for this, but yeah, please, we can wrap up after. Don't get up. Don't get up. We can sit here. We'll wrap up.
I would now like to invite our final keynote speaker, Ms. Anna Roy, Senior Advisor, Women Entrepreneurship and Empowerment, NITI Aayog. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you very much, and my apologies for disrupting your panel, but I have another meeting which I just postponed for half an hour. Didn't want to postpone it further. People are waiting, so that's why. Thank you very much. So it was great hearing from you, and I wish I could have stayed back. Farzana has always been like really, in all our events. But some anecdotal things I would like to start with. At the age of 22, I am also from Delhi School of Economics. At that time, we were not required to take the NEET exam for lecturership. We would just go for interviews and we get at least the temporary ones. So I was in one of the ladies' colleges and I was the youngest in the faculty. After a year and a half, I thought this is not for me. I'm a people person. And I wanted to leave. And there was an option in Terry at that time. And the advice given to me was, a lecturer's job is best. बच्चों के साथ छुट्टी मिलेगा, घर में जा सकोगे, lunch, things like that. Everybody in that faculty tried to dissuade me. The second incident I would like to repeat is my first boss in the government, finance ministry, whom I consider to be my mentor. And he would keep me late, and somebody in the section, the lower level officer, told me, "Madam, आप तो ladies हैं, आप क्यों रुक रही हैं? You can tell them and leave." So I left one day at 6. Next day I was called promptly. "Where were you?" I said, "Sir, I left." "Why?" "Sir, I'm a lady officer." I actually told him because I was so raw. I was a joint secretary. I did not know the importance of a senior IS officer at that time. And I said, "I am a lady officer." And so I left. So he told me that once you join the service, you are either a lady or an officer. There is no such thing as a lady officer. Whatever the others do, you do. And that I have taken to heart. And in fact, one of my other bosses put this incident in his book, one of his books. And he said she never failed after that, and she has kind of proved. Anyway, so basically, in any of these women-centric, gender-based things, I always used to be very uncomfortable because I never faced any of these issues, and I kept telling Radhika, "Ye nahi hota," wo kehti, "Nahi hota hai." So I still have this problem because perhaps personal, and I'm single, happily single. What Kanta said. So I never faced any of these issues, and so very difficult for me to relate. And this gender happened to me in NITI when for the first time Shobna, who was at that time chair of CII, wanted to do a moving the needle gender-based index, and the then CEO said, "Anna will do it." And I kind of, initiated that. So the first thing I'm going to say, academics is very nice. Where is the data? After 2 long years, Shobna gave up. After her 1-year presidentship, she pursued for some time, then she gave up. There is no data, and then no organizations will agree on the indicators. Somebody will say, "Nahi, ye to." So, when we talk, we have to kind of, I think a point was made, we have to get out of that bichari syndrome. And because of that, we were not able to agree on the indicators. Somebody said, "Ye nahi karoge to ghar mein kaam aap, how do you measure the damn thing?" As it is, you don't have data. At least you have to start somewhere. So that would be my first thing. Now, I come to such events because of Women Entrepreneurship Platform. I told Aaradhana, labor participation is not my area. She said, "No, you talk about, whatever you are doing." So I will be just speaking about this. I cannot see that, so good, I'm carrying a printout. I'm not going to, talk about all the details. Workforce, we all know that, where women stand, and just now it was mentioned. What my team tells me, apparently from the national average, Delhi fares even worse compared to national average. I cannot they say that, Delhi has even worse thing. Then even when there is work, the choices are limited. Like I said, lecturership was considered to be the best thing that can happen. So choices are limited, which sector you can go, and it was also mentioned here, Kanta mentioned. And constraints remain structural and not perhaps individual. Sorry, I have not been. So, I'll just skip through this. So basically, I will make a case that when you are talking about labor force participation, what about the avenue of entrepreneurship as something which I feel personally, given our flexi hours and, all the CT of the cooker and all, कुछ तो balance करना पड़ता है, we cannot run away from that. Some things, I think it remains not in balance, but at least make the best of whatever is available. Entrepreneurship gives you flexibility. And, I feel entrepreneurship as a vocation should be pushed far more than we are doing today. I have been running Women Entrepreneurship Platform for the last 8 years. We completed 8 years this year without any government funding, without any kind of, support from any department, only based on collaboration with concerned stakeholders. And that is the biggest, hurdle. How do you bring people together for a common goal? And that is, I think, this I would like to say, we have achieved, and I'm kind of proud of it, that today Women Entrepreneurship Platform has more than 1 lakh registered users. 40% are men, because there is a lot of information available. But I would say I'm just at stage 1, first series of raising funding, kind of a very, very nascent WEP. But from this year, we have been able to make a lot of, cover a lot of ground. We have opened our chapters in 9 states. Haryana, by the way, is most advanced, and we are working with them. UP is very advanced. So it's not as if only the southern states are doing, northern states are doing very well. And WEP had, under its aegis, a report, study was done by MSc with PU civil data, credit. So last year also it was done, this year the same thing was done. So northern states for, the growth, it could be a base effect, but the growth of credit taken by women, which can be a proxy for how to see how women are faring in this space, is increasing. This year a further thing was added on business loans. So it is personal largely, but there is a growth in business. And compared to 2017, there is a quite exponential growth in credit being availed by women, especially in states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. So that is very heartening. Now coming to entrepreneurship, in my experience over these 8 years, I've seen it's not about whether you are rich or poor. I think women enter into entrepreneurship. Some are like, I won't use that term, but they are like supported by family, and so they just have some funds and they'll venture into it without knowing the ropes of the business. So I feel information is the biggest thing. Only second to opportunities, but opportunities is not relevant if you don't have relevant knowledge. And the knowledge, kind of knowledge we have, these are like data dumps. So my first attempt had been to get all the relevant knowledge at one place and make it accessible seamlessly. So right knowledge at the right time. We have a knowledge portal with the help of CII, YI. We have built an intelligent layer over it. but the back-end information we are still collecting. So by the end of this year, we should have this access to information on government schemes. We have covered 171 central and rest are state schemes, a total of 835. Also FI schemes, banks, etc. We have all put it at one place. Now with AI, we will be helping in accessing that information further. So that is first. We feel the access to knowledge is one of the most crucial things. Second is access to opportunities. Now this is a flagship initiative which we have launched. It's a plug and play framework, award to reward. We earlier used to do Women Transforming India Awards, and that was discontinued. So, but everybody said we need to, somebody said we need to showcase role models. So Chetna and Sangeeta, everybody said we must continue that. We have to showcase role models, but we could not do that. So we said, okay, we used to give awards for people who have arrived. Now we will reward those who have not arrived but who show the potential. So that is our award to reward. We have now completed several programs over pan-India, covering several sectors. 2 were done in Delhi. So that program is done with an anchor investor. So Make My Trip did it for homestay owners in Northeast. Urban Company did it for beauty and wellness for women in Delhi. And New Shop did it for convenience stores both in Delhi and in Lucknow. So the corporate entity which becomes our partner also does it in its own comfort zone. We have a plug and play where, say, in the Make My Trip for homestay, ITC did a one week program for all these 24 homestay owners. So that way we are bringing partners together. So that is hand-holding them and helping them realize their dreams in achieving wherever they are. So here I was just telling Radhika, we have Swavlambini, which we have implemented with the Ministry of Skill Development, targeting college-going girls, because we feel if we train them at that stage, when they get into that space, they are better informed to take better decisions. And then we do Yashaswini, which is for MSMEs and nano, like we did one for agri, women engaged in agri. We are doing another one in Telangana for women engaged in agri, because they are also entrepreneurs. They are taking a risk. They are going to the market. So that is what we are focusing on. So that is the Award to Reward program. We have a mentorship platform for one-to-one mentorship. We have developed a community of these women online where they can, peer-to-peer learning and sharing their information. Also, on the knowledge portal, we have put a marketplace where you can upload your venture as a service provider. The product we have not yet covered. So if I am looking for a CA, I can go there that, look, can you help me? So that kind of ecosystem we have developed. And I think the success has been pretty good, because these I would consider pilot. And now we are ready for a scale-up, because in 9 states our chapters have been opened, and we are now rolling out these programs in a systematic manner. We have got some women who have actually, Meeta from Ferns and Petal has set up a company to work with WEP for this. Ruchita Bansal from Izhar has set up a company again. And then there is this amazing group of women in hospitality, Wiki. It's their association, you must meet them. So good they are. They are all senior management from hotels chains. So they are doing this thing for homestays. And we are now going pan-India for all of this. Lastly, we would need, whenever I come to such events, this is basically an opportunity for me to make a pitch for WEP. Please join hands. What we need is convergence. Like my typical dialogue is, everybody wants to build their own, Taj Mahal. Let's not do that. WEP has been here for 8 years, and not one single program I have allowed to be launched by WEP. Whatever we do is in convergence with partners, stakeholders. We don't have any product specifically for WEP. And with that, I would like to kind of end. I think I've covered all of this. And so basically, in Delhi, I have highlighted we need to work closely. We can design programs and reimagine pathways. I think WEPs are very unique. I still have a lot of trouble explaining this to various government departments. Strengthen partnerships. Government can only do this much, then it is all up to us. And design for women. Chetana, who is one of my close friends, she used to say, don't think that women are, the grassroots, jo bhaji bech rahi hai, she is a fool. We are not able to design a product to meet her needs in the financial sector. So I think make women-centric programs, which we have tried to do in WEP, and together we can achieve these goals. Here, I would, since Aaradhana is here, when Sudha was president of YFLO, we had a very good program and wanted to initiate on care economy in FICCI. She organized it. And Dr. Paul, member from NITI Aayog, came and and he called upon the industry there. Nothing happened. So I think before you go to the government, the industry associations need to take a call, okay, we will do this. Let us start from the industry. I think government has done its bit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. We are getting issued out of the hall. So while I'd hope that we would be able to chat a little bit more.
Thank you, Ms. Roy, for the clarity and vision. Please accept the token of appreciation on our behalf.
Oh. Come.
If all the panelists here can also come. Yes.
No, I was hoping to do some wrap-up with just the panel, but we don't have time.
Even if they don't have anything else after this. Thank you.
No, huh? Thank you. Can I please, this is just such a random closure to the panel. Can I please have you thank all of our panelists and join us for tea? I was hoping that we could have some conversations because we had such a fantastic audience, but we. You are